Alright, so this is an interesting thing. We've talked about this before on these discussions, this chat that I do here like this. And that is, to what extent does the mother bear share with the cubs? I don't know, maybe it's just something that I'm personally kind of interested in. Because I'm always interested in, how similar are their emotions? Is their thought process, how similar is it to ours? Because sometimes it seems so similar. But maybe that's just wishful thinking on our part, right? We kind of want them to be the same as us. Wow! Full-on dive. I've lost wish. Can you hold your breath that long? That's interesting. And back up. Alright, so I'm gonna open the phone again and look for some questions, and we can keep going here for a little bit. Alright, so let's see here. There's a question on there, in the comments below, and I'm answering those questions if I see them. Honestly, I'm probably only getting to about 1%, but if you got a question, especially about something about everything being connected, I'm really into those kind of questions tonight. We've been talking about it a little bit. Then yeah, post it and let me see if I can get to it. But someone was posting, what bear is this? Okay, so that's an interesting question. And if you're new to the cams, you might be saying, what do you mean what bear it is? It's a wild animal. How would you know what bear it is? But yeah, this is an individual bear. This is an individual organism. And here in Brooks Camp, we end up seeing the same bears pretty often. So, for research purposes, there's a couple of people involved in, really just one person involved in doing a research project to monitor which individual bears use the river and if they return, and keeping track of things like that, just keeping data on it, saying how many different individual bears are using the river. And so it becomes important to assign individual IDs for those bears, so that they can keep track of which bears are coming to the river and which ones aren't. And you can get an accurate number of how many are using the river. But let me say that accurate is a fuzzy word when we talk about this. A lot of times bears will get mis-ID'd or miscounted, and it's not a perfect system, but it's working for us so far. But anyway, so the bears end up with a number, and then sometimes with a nickname too, just to keep track of them. It helps linguistically and logistically when you're talking about different animals and where they are. When they start jamming up traffic around camp, it's helpful to be able to refer to one, if you can, as what individual it is. We can't always do that because we're not always very good at IDing them, which is all a very long and complex way of saying that this is probably bear 402 with their two cubs. This is interesting. That reminds me of something. How do you ID the bear? Well, that's a whole world we could dive into. How do you tell one bear apart from another? But another, maybe a more general question that we could start with: how do you tell a male bear from a female bear? There's lots of old tricks that get spread around, things people say you can do. Let me say that there's two tricks that are about as much of a guarantee as you can find. One of them is if there's an adult bear with cubs with it, then it's a female bear. That's about as much of a guarantee as you can get. And then if you see the bear urinate out the back, that's female. Where'd she go? That's amazing. Never seen anything so amazing in my life. It's so cool. So those are really the only two tricks, The male bears kind of pee forward underneath, I guess like a cow or a horse, the same way you'd watch them pee to tell their sex. There's a lot of these rules or these sayings about, you know, the shape of the skull and the color of the fur and things like that, and they're not untrue. They say that in northern Alaska and in the Yukon, grizzly bears, I think it's the females, end up being lighter in color and the males darker in color. But that's less true here. And it's also, there's enough exceptions to that rule, and it's fuzzy enough often that it's not a useful tool for IDing. Even if it's true, it's not going to help you, because it's just not consistently true enough. Another thing is the skull shape and the size. Like, well, we can get females that are really big here and males that are pretty small. And I've seen bears with all kinds of skull shapes. Skull shape is really great for IDing individual bears. That's true. It can be pretty distinct in the way one bear's face looks. Kind of like a human face. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and maybe it sounds like there is some truth to that males will have, on average, wider and more square-shaped skulls, where females will have more of a sloped skull, and maybe it's true in this instance right here. But it's not a good way to determine sex. Even if it is true, it's just not going to be that helpful to you because there's too many exceptions. Sorry, I'm fiddling with the tripod here, trying to get it to work more smoothly. I've determined what my problem is. There we go. So earlier we were talking about all the different fishing techniques that bears use. Let me go through some of that again real quick. Every bear is going to, you know, kind of find its own preferred methods. Maybe it's going to have a few different preferred methods. It's going to work, you know, it's going to have skills that it's going to build up over its lifetime of fishing different ways. And the mothers totally teach the cubs their fishing techniques. And you can see that happening right now. See how that cub's watching its mother? So it's learning lessons from its mother, and then they'll learn throughout the rest of their life too. They're pretty smart, and they'll learn from watching other bears. And, so you'll see different fishing techniques, just kind of snorkeling around like this, diving in the water, sitting and waiting in one spot, fishing the lip, catching the bears or catching the fish as they jump up the falls. You've probably seen pictures of that. That's really what this place is famous for, but it's actually sort of a rare thing and takes a special bear with a special skill set to do it. Alright, I'm hesitant to jump into this topic, but I know everyone's interested. What is that bear doing back there? And the answer to that question is we don't know. It's a subadult bear, and we've been seeing it hang out with this family group and other sow and cub family groups pretty frequently this summer. That's kind of an unusual thing. Not crazy, but subadult bears are kind of the teenagers of the bear world. Probably heard something like that before. But basically, they're just trying to get everything figured out. They're not good at being a bear yet. They're still working on it. They're still trying to figure out how they're going to fish, where they're going to go to be safe, kind of what routine they're going to follow. And they're still pretty vulnerable. They're not very big. And so what we've been seeing lately is this subadult, wherever it went, there it is back there. Look at that. We didn't see what just happened, you know, if it caught that live, or if that's a fish that was stripped of its skin by one of the big male bears and washed downstream or something like that. But we talked about that earlier, that a lot of times the big male bears will only eat the fatty parts of the fish. They'll just take a few of their favorite bites and then let the rest wash down. It's bears like this, little subadults, that reap the rewards of that. What can look like waste, you know, is really just the natural world distributing resources, I guess. So anyway, we've been seeing that subadult hang around in this family group quite a bit. Maybe for protection, maybe just learning, maybe it just doesn't know what's going on. Maybe it's totally coincidence and we've been imagining it, and it's only happened a few times but we've been around for those few times and then we've read into it a whole bunch. Hard to say, but it's an interesting thing, you know, and that's one of the things that's cool about this place, is that we can watch some of those things play out. Other places in this world where there are a lot of bears, you just don't see the same bears consistently enough to know, or you know, to even know that that's happening, let alone what it means. Someone commented that this was the first long fish dive they've seen this year, and I would have to agree with that. We were just talking about all these different strategies that they use to catch fish. That diving is not a common strategy here at the falls. Look at the cub though. What did I just say? Learning from its mother. Snorkeling around looking for fish. But later in the fall, later in the season, in the fall, when the salmon are down in the deeper, slower moving parts of the river, diving like that is a lot more common. Diving down to slower moving fish that are easier to catch. These fish are quick and pretty strong still, most of them. This is not a strategy we see this bear do every time or anything like that either. Like I said, it's tempting to just put our thought processes on that and say, oh, maybe it's doing it because of this or whatever, but we don't know what's going on in there, which is what makes it so amazing. Totally wild. It's not doing that because it's a trick we taught it. It's doing that because it wants to. Let me see if I have any questions on the comments below. I'm trying to answer them as I go along. If you're just joining us, you know, you're curious about something, throw a question on there. Even if I don't get to it, someone will probably help you out. Tons of smart and really nice people watch these cams. Will the sow defend her cub in the case of an attack by a boar? Absolutely. We should talk about that, huh? So there's a hierarchy, right? We talked about that these big males compete to get the best fishing spots and access to the females and stuff, and just to show each other who's boss. They're constantly fighting around. These females are sometimes so vicious and so ferocious in their protection. Oh, there's a little discipline or something going on there. So they can be so protective and so intense about their protection of their cubs that they can disrupt that hierarchy. Normally it's just the big males that end up dominating the show here, taking over the scene at the falls. But sometimes it'll get disrupted by very aggressive, very defensive mothers protecting their cubs. So yeah, they can be very ferocious protectors. Someone was just saying one cub keeps looking over its shoulder, and I guess I'm kind of noticing that too. Maybe we're just seeing things, but yeah, see, it keeps looking downriver. I don't see any bears down there other than the subadult right there. But I will say that there's quite a few people on the platform here with me. It's kind of a busy night. I do see one bear way downriver, way past the riffles. Okay, so what? Maybe we should do a little count here. We got that one down there, the 2 cubs, the mother, and the 2 bears back in the corner of the falls there. What's going on? Alright, I know I need to keep checking for questions, but I just feel like we've got to talk about this. Where did those bears go? Looks like they went in a cave. Well, where they went is up a historic fish ladder. In the 1950s, I believe it was a state, people who were managing this area, they were watching these fish jump and not make it all that often, and they said, oh no, these fish never make it up the falls, we've got to do something to help them. So they took some dynamite. Oh, subadult is slowly following behind. So they took some dynamite and they blasted out this side of the falls. Blew it out. And built a fish ladder with the idea that they would help the fish. Well, the fish didn't use it. Fish don't need it. Fish have been jumping up these waterfalls as long as there's been a waterfall. Long, long time. They are built to do this. So now the National Park Service has partly filled in that fish ladder, but some water still trickles through, and there's still kind of a series of steps over there with logs and dirt filled into them. But I can't tell you what the bears did once they went up there. I can't see it. One thing, though, that those people who thought they should build the fish ladder, one thing that they were thinking, I think, right about, though, is they were thinking about the keystone species, that is the salmon, and how connected it was to everything else, and how important it was for this whole ecosystem that the salmon run continue in a healthy way. Without the sockeye salmon, this place would be a very different place. We would still probably have bears, but not like this. Someone just asked, if the mom keeps eating the fish without sharing it with the cubs, how will the cubs benefit? She certainly didn't share it with the cub who was hanging back. Yeah, this is another common question. Interesting, right? Is she a bad mom, quote unquote, or a good mom, all that kind of thing? Like I was saying, it's so tempting to put our own thoughts and feelings and the way humans think about things and the way humans think about children. It's tempting to drop that onto these bears, but they got their own thing going on. You know, one way you could interpret it is, well, she's got to nurse these cubs all winter long in the den. She won't be eating, she's not taking fish in the den with her, she's not stockpiling this stuff or canning it up, putting it in the cellar. She's going to stop eating and drinking for the whole winter. But the cubs won't. They're going to keep nursing. How is she going to do that? Well, she's got to get really fat. She's got to gain a bunch of weight. She's got to gain a bunch of weight to be able to do it. So the cubs benefit if she gains enough weight to successfully nurse them and keep them growing all winter long, so they come out of the den with weight gains next year. But the only way she's going to have the strength to do that is if she eats a lot of fish. So what you'll see a lot is the mothers kind of do this combo strategy where they share with the cubs to some extent, but they're looking after themselves too, and they're really making sure that they get fat enough to take care of themselves. By the way, we're pointing the camera at this, and even I've sort of tricked myself into thinking that that's the cub, or a cub with the sow that we were looking at, but of course it's not. This is a subadult bear that we've been watching wander around the area here, and the sow with cubs has gone somewhere upriver, perhaps to nurse or just catch fish in there, but I can't see him from here, and that's all right. They might come back. We've got lots to look at here. A lot of times if things get boring, I just start talking about gulls and salmon and all kinds of things, good things like that I'm interested in. Hopefully some of you are interested in that too. But tonight we got a lot of bear action. We're talking a lot about bears. But I like talking about the ecosystem as a whole and the biodiversity that makes it so special. I think that the more we can learn to appreciate the whole ecosystem, then just the bears and the salmon just become even better. I know for me, I watched wildlife a lot growing up, spent a lot of time going to Yellowstone and Glacier National Park and everything, and I kind of, as a young adult, thought, man, yeah, I've kind of seen a lot of the wildlife around here, and I'm probably not going to stop the car if I see a herd of elk. I've kind of seen that. Then I started getting into watching birds, getting into birding, IDing birds and listening. I was like, whoa! Turns out there's a huge amount of wildlife that I have never really paid attention to, and that is birds. Wow, you know? And then once I started doing that, all the other animals started to kind of open up my eyes again too. I started paying more attention because I start seeing things that birds do, and I start getting excited about, you know, the way the other animals are acting too, and you start looking for connections and looking for interdependence and things like that. And it's easy to find it once you start looking. So I find that the more I open my eyes and open myself up to the ecosystem as a whole, that some of these specifics become just all the more enjoyable. Lately I've been feeling that way about fish, sticking my head under the water, and I realize, wow, I thought I was looking at a lot of animals when I was looking at the birds and the animals on the shores. But then I started sticking my head under the water, and I realized that there was a lot of animals I was never noticing. So I think what's going on is that the sow with cubs is just kind of hanging out right in the fish ladder area, out of my view. And I think that the subadult is kind of just hanging around watching, wondering what, well, excuse me. It's so tempting to just put our own thoughts into the minds of those bears, but we don't know what it's thinking. I don't have a clue. Alright, let me see if I've got some questions. Oh, this is a good question. Someone said that the fish, yeah, I said that the fish lay their eggs right around here. Yeah, right down in the, I mean, you can see the gravel. It's just, I don't think it translates very well on the camera, but, well, it doesn't translate to human eyes very well either. But there are fish in there. The fish have actually thinned out a fair bit since we started talking. They were a lot thicker, I guess. They kind of got up the falls. The fish tend to move in these pulses where they kind of go in safety in numbers. You'll see a whole bunch of them kind of schooling up together and jumping the falls really thick. There's still a decent amount jumping though. And then they'll kind of pool up, and so they'll move quickly through the shallow waters, you know, kind of pool up, school up together, get in a big group in the slower, deeper waters. Oh wow, yeah, that was what I was talking about though. Yep, I just saw it. I saw a female pink salmon turn on her side and dig a nest to do some spawning right here. Maybe you can see their movement a little bit. It's kind of hard to see, but sometimes you just notice when the female turns on her side because you can see her belly. Oh, I just saw it again. Well, I'm not going to keep zooming in on the water surface, but maybe you'll be able to see it a little bit like this. You can kind of see her belly will flash a little bit of, you know, that silvery undercolor. Yeah, I'm seeing it actually several times now. I'm seeing it right in that area, so if you see it, you know, keep your eyes open. I'm getting so distracted though, so the question was, do they spawn there? Yes. Okay, so there's the salmon are spawning there. Do the bears dig up the eggs and eat those too? Like, well, they totally would. Sure, you know, the bears love fish eggs, but they don't need to because they've got access to the whole fish. Even once the salmon are done spawning, they'll be floating downstream, you know, growing weaker and weaker, and so the bears will just be eating those whole fish. What is a sub-adult? A sub-adult is kind of the teenager of the bear world. We were just looking at one. I can't really look over to it now. It's kind of over there in the corner. But it's a bear that has just been, this year, emancipated, kicked out by its mom. It's not nursing anymore. It's on its own. But it's not fully grown. It's got a few more years to reach physical and sexual maturity. So it's a sub-adult for a while. Kind of doing its own thing. Sub-adult bears too are often pretty curious, investigative, and even though they're smaller, they can be ones that make you a little bit more nervous. Because they'll get closer to the people. They'll act kind of funny around people. They're a little bit unpredictable. Well, all these bears are unpredictable, but you can just see the unpredictability in the way that sub-adults move sometimes. And that's just because they're not sure what they're going to do with their life yet. Do 1-year-old cubs still nurse in the den or only newborns? Yeah, they all nurse. Sometimes you'll see even the 2.5-year-old, well, 3.5-year-old cubs sometimes even still nursing. Alright, the rain is coming down a fair bit more now. But I'm hanging in there. I've got a bag over the camera and I got a rubber jacket on, so I'm doing okay. And the bears don't mind the rain. There is kind of a going theory around camp that bears don't like wind, but there's not any data yet to back that up. We're actually been talking about how we could get some data to see if it's actually true. But bears don't seem to mind the rain at all. Someone asked, how does a sow kick the cub out? Does the cub want to continue to follow her? Yeah, they do. You know, and it's not something that gets observed all that often, like the actual kicking out, whether it happens, you know, all at once or if it takes a while to really fully leave the mom. But sometimes, yeah, she'll just turn on the cub, get a little bit physical, and say, get out of here, you know? And that can be probably pretty rough. You can imagine the one person that always was looking out for you and defending you and everything turning on you. But it's not really it's not a social choice, you know. For the most part, it seems like it's a biological thing. She's going back into estrus probably and looking to mate again, and the cubs get in the way of that. But also, if she's going back into estrus and male bears are starting to court her and hang around, then they're going to put those cubs in a lot of danger, and the cubs are not going to want to stick around, or they're going to have to be fighting for their lives with big male bears that are trying to breed with their mom. So sometimes they can be partly the mom encouraging them to get away, but sometimes it's they're leaving on their own for their own well-being. Sometimes both. But like I said, it's even in a place like this where we get to see the bears so much, there is still so much we don't see about these bears. You know, it feels like we see them all the time, but they live a lot of their life outside of the view of these cameras and outside of the view of the rangers. But we're pretty lucky to get to see what we do see. Alright, I'm going to go for 10 more minutes. Go till 6 o'clock here Alaska time. And I'll be trying to come back on here as much as I can while in the last part of the salmon run this summer. Someone asked if bears ever have a problem with if the bears ever have a problem with getting fish bones or things like that stuck in their throats or in their mouths. You know, I've never heard of that. I've never heard of them having any problem with that. There's a couple things going on there. One of them is that bears are really tough and are very well adapted to be pretty intense omnivores that can eat and digest almost anything. The other thing that's going on is fish bones aren't that tough. You know, you've probably eaten a fish bone before, and if you power through it, it doesn't usually cause too much trouble. So one of the things I've enjoyed talking about tonight is the interconnectedness of all of this, the way that these bears, you know, capture our attention, but really how they're just one, albeit one important piece, but just one piece of the whole bigger picture, and that without the bigger picture, we or them wouldn't be around. I think there's kind of a famous saying, something about the importance of even microorganisms and bacteria, that if all the humans on the earth disappeared, the bacteria would be fine. But if all the bacteria on earth disappeared, humans would die out. Speaks to kind of that interconnectedness and the dependence we have on natural systems around us. I like to think we're even dependent on bears and salmon like this, not just in commercial and material ways, but just socially, that people who take the time to look at wild animals and spend time in nature and to enjoy wild places and wild animals, that something about it kind of makes us healthier. You know, I don't have real evidence for that, but I think it's good for us. I think maybe you guys agree. Another question I kind of asked everyone, that I kind of wondering what everyone's been thinking about. If you're just tuning in, maybe you missed this. We were talking about when the rangers here interfere with the animals, saying that these are totally wild bears. We don't really interfere much at all. The one exception is if the reason for interfering is that humans caused the problem in the first place. If we injured a bear through an accident or something like that, then, and there's something we can do to alleviate it, then the park might interfere to help the bear. But for the most part, there's no interference. But if you were in charge, how would you do it? Would you interfere with the bears? We all got kind of excited there for a moment. The South Cubs stepped up onto the lip of the falls and then for some reason walked away. I don't know where they went, somewhere upriver. Seems like things are quieting down for the moment, but who knows, they might pick back up. Let me jump on and see if there's any questions that I should answer. I haven't said it in a while, but we've been talking for about 2 hours now. I'm Ranger Daniel. Every now and then a ranger like me hops on the camera and answers questions and talks about what we're watching here in Katmai National Park in the Alaskan Peninsula. We're looking at wild bears, wild fish, wild birds too. Someone was just commenting about maybe doing some kind of live chat or something about the birds. I think that would be really great. There are a lot of birds that are really interesting out here. The ones we're looking at right now are mostly the glaucous-winged gulls, but there are other kinds of gulls, and you know, if you give the gulls a chance, you might find some interesting things that they're doing as well. We also got a lot of eagles and osprey and lots of great songbirds in the forest and stuff. So there's a lot of good stuff in the birds, and yeah, it'd be something I got to think about the logistics of how we could do some kind of bird talk, but something I'll consider. Maybe towards the end of the season, or maybe next year in the spring at the lower river would be good for that when there's more birds. Do they get out of the water? Do the bears get out of the water? Do they fish all night? Some of them, you know, I don't know about all night. Even the bear monitor doesn't sit here watching them constantly all night. She'll come check them at night, randomly for her research, do some night observations, and finds that a lot of bears do fish very late into the night. But they'll eat until they're full, and then they'll go nap for a while. And some of the bears that we see around here regularly do fish pretty late into the night. Looks like the fish are starting to jump more. I wouldn't be surprised if we see more bears later tonight. So if it's not too late in whatever time zone you're in, I would encourage you to check out the cams, stay tuned to them, you know, check back in tomorrow. There's a lot of great stuff on here. If you have questions, always throw them down in the bottom. Comment to us on Facebook, stuff like that. We'll try and help you out. There's a great community of people who watch these cams and will help you, even if I miss the question, because I miss a lot of them. I'm sorry about that. This has been a really great chat, a really great evening spending with you guys talking about all this. I love doing it. I love this place. I really can't get enough of it. Starting to get pretty wet, so I guess I'll wrap it up. We've been going for a while. Hopefully we can do it again sometime real soon. I hope you can take some of what we talked about tonight. A lot of the science these days is just showing us how connected everything is, and that the best way to think about it at all is kind of all one thing. And that, you know, sometimes what a species is even sort of arbitrary and hard to say. That we shouldn't forget about individual organisms or specific species, but that the whole ecosystem is really important, and protecting whole ecosystems, that's really what the National Park Service is about. That's really what I'm personally all about. Whether the Park Service was about it or not, that would be my jam. That's really what I'm into, is learning about, enjoying, and preserving, and hopefully teaching about whole ecosystems and how important they are. And so I hope you can kind of join in that passion with me and try and share it with the world, really. Okay, everyone. This is Ranger Daniel signing off for tonight. Keep checking back. Stay tuned. Get outside. Go enjoy whatever ecosystem you're a part of, whatever ecosystem you live in. It's all connected. It's all really wonderful. And we'll talk again soon.
这个